Let me welcome to the show. He's a Harvard professor, actually the first and so far only instructor of Gullah at Harvard. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's from Charleston, from that area, the Gullah Geechie area of South Carolina. Let me welcome for the first time, Dr. Sunn M'Cheaux. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here with a hometown gal.
Yes. Yes. I'll receive that. Listen, because South Carolina was the entry point. So if you are Bayesian, we have a connection to Barbados, of course, to Africa. When I look at you, I see Jamaica, I see Barbados, I see Trinidad, I see all of the things. And those people, the retention of African culture in that area was so strong because of it. Well, please tell the people, because you can tell them better than I can.
Well, growing up in the Low Country in South Carolina, you'll always hear people say, "Hey, what island are you from?" Or what island? I'm thinking it's on John's Island, Watermelon Island, someplace, But I didn't realize there were whole countries of people and islands that sounded just like I did, say in the Bahamas and different parts, Guyana. But since I didn't have access to them, I kind of bought into the idea that maybe I was speaking broken English, or maybe it was because, we were ignorant, or maybe it was because we were uneducated, because that's the lesson that you were told, that's what you were taught. And so when people would ask what islands you're from, it never occurred to me until I started meeting more people from the islands, as in the Caribbean. And it really made it official when I went over there and started talking to people in the Bahamas, and they were asking me where I was from there. Like when, cause this code switch, this right here, my real accent, when I, be talking, when I start code switching. So when I go over there and talk to them like this, and they'd be like, where you from around here? Because, how come you staying in the resort? If you from here, what are you doing in the resort? And so we have a conversation. And I've said this before, but I remember saying to myself, like, golly, these sound just like we back home. And, somebody coming the building, I'm going down to get something to eat, and somebody coming to the building and say, "Ooh, Charlie, cold out there." If that ain't no talk to them, you close your eyes, you back home. And yeah, Gally, sure is, and when you listen to people talk and they listen to you talk, and then you start putting two and two together, then I asked them, when they asked where I'm from, I said, I'm Gullah Geechie, from the Low Country, South Carolina. They hadn't heard of it. So I was like, oh man, how interesting. I grew up not knowing about you. You grew up not knowing about me. And here it is, we have so much in common. And it's not just like a coincidence. Like you just said, we're in the port city. Good, about 3/4 of African Americans, generational African Americans, came through Charleston. And so when you're talking about people being transported back and forth between the Caribbean, and then the Revolutionary War pops off, and loyalists leave and go to the Caribbean and take the people who are enslaved with them, and wherever you go, there you are. You take your language with you, you take your custom, you take your traditions. And so you end up with two sets of people sounding so much alike, and we think it's just, mere coincidence, I suppose, but it's not coincidence. We're actually the same people, just different places, same people. And so that's one of the things that really intrigued me the most about it, is you can find little bits and pieces, even people who say, oh, they don't know nothing about Gullah Geechie, but the way that they modify a verb in a sentence. Everybody, for the most part, in African-American English, most people have heard you say, "I'ma go, I'ma do." Well, I'ma tell you what. Well, that is how we are saying for that verb presently. That is our present tense. Go. Who would say that? Who said that? Okay. So now, if I wanted to make it a future tense, I would say, well, who could say that? That "g" is our future tense. Okay, that's our will. But what if it's past tense? Who would say that? The "at" is our past tense. But if I'm talking about a present continuous or continuous tense, it'll be like, well, who did say that? The "duh" is our continuous. So when you grow up saying these things and nobody tells you, like, hey, there's a system to that, right? Like, that's not just an accident. Like you're consistently saying the same things to get the same results over and over again. Like that's your lexicon. That's the syntax, right. The grammar. Nobody told you that.
Even the I be, you be, he be, African conjugation. But That would never be taught in American schools. You'd be taught when you put the at the back, you're putting the preposition at the back, at the end of the sentence. That is poor grammar. You are ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about. So tell me, Miss Dr. M'Cheaux, growing up in Geechie Gullah, Charleston area of South Carolina, how does one get to Harvard, and when did you discover that the way in which you spoke and everybody in your area and beyond, because like you said, it's spread. My father's people from South Carolina as well. When did you learn that this was a language? And then how were you able to suss it out enough to sit and create rules to teach it at Harvard?
Well, there's two things that tie into one another. The first and foremost being, most of the time, put it this way, like fish don't know they're fish. They just swim and going about life existing as fish. We're the ones on the outside looking down in the water saying, oh, but that's this kind of fish and that's that kind of fish. Well, that's kind of how it was when you lived down a dirt road in the country. All of your Davis's cousins, woods for as far as the eyes can see, you're just going about living life. You're not really looking at your language from an analytical perspective. You're not processing it in the way that people on the outside are processing you. You're just going about life. And so it was a culture shock when for me at least, and I know many of the people that I talk to, when you go to school and you start interacting with other students, teachers, a lot of the times our first shame that we experience in school, it's the teacher. It's realizing you're a fish out of water, because there's a moment when someone asks you a question. There's a moment when they were bringing rice cakes to class, and I remember thinking, rice cake? What are you bringing rice cake to class for? Like, who could bring rice cake to school? That don't make no sense. And so they brought some rice cakes in, and it was these little dry hockey puck looking things that I had never seen before, because that's not what was rice cake to me. To me, rice cake was, if you cook a pot of rice, anything that gets stuck on the sides of the pot or get brown on the sides of the pot, that's caked up rice. We'll pour water in it and make it soft again and churn it up and, eat the rest of it and turn a little brown color. That's what rice cake been to me. And so in that moment, if I say, oh, but that ain't rice cake, this is rice cake, that's not a moment where you need to correct me. That's a moment when you need to learn, oh, well, this is a cultural exchange for us between you and the teacher. Like, oh, okay, so going forward, this is rice cake to you, this is rice cake to me. Let's have an exchange here and value both things. That ain't what happened in school. So if you know good and well what this student is saying, and you still feel the need to correct them, especially if it doesn't have anything to do with grammar, this is math class, what are you doing? You ain't here to correct my grammar. Like, what are you doing? And if I say it's it's three of them. Oh, that's 1, 2, 3. Oh no, it's 3. No, I say it's 3. It's 3. It's 3. You know good and well I just said 3, but I pronounce it shri or tree. But you still feel like you needed to tell me it's 3. And if I don't say it the way you want me to say it, then now I'm in speech therapy.
Right. Were you in speech therapy?
No, because I figured out really quickly what they wanted to hear. It was pretty fast. Okay, this is, and it's not just like in grammar class. I didn't figure this out in grammar class. I figured this out, like, people say, oh, you speak so well. I did not get that from English. I did not get that from my English teachers. That was a survival tactic that a little boy watched a whole lot of PBS and masterpiece theaters and all this other stuff and listened to other people talk, because he had figured out, oh, this is what they want to hear. And in that moment, there was a moment, not proud of it, but there was a moment when it was my word versus someone else's. A little boy who had a thicker Gullah, Geechie accent when he spoke to the teacher. Now, I was lying, but I was lying articulately. I was lying articulately, and they believed me. And in moments like that, I realized, like, wow, they not only think that this is unintelligent, but there's also a moral component to the way we sound. Like, they think there's something immoral even. Like, maybe I'm up to something if I sound like that. And again, this is a little 5, 6, 7-year-old boy who's figured this out. And so as adults, they keep reinforcing that message to have you code switch to the point where you and I will be from the low country. Let somebody else come in the conversation, and none of us will talk like this when we talk to each other. It almost takes somebody to do it first, and then you might do it. Then they might slip into it. But as long as you don't, he don't, I don't, then we are all just, Professor Hunter, and we're all gonna do that until somebody else says something. It's to the point where even when we start making intimate connections, now think about it, when you start dating somebody or talking to somebody on a social level, that's when you're supposed to be your most transparent, your most genuine self. But you'll get two people from the same town with the same accent who still code switch at first because they don't want to seem uncultured or uneducated to one another. Only 6 months down the line, or when they get real comfortable with one another, you can hear them around the house talking like they ain't been talking on the first day, but we don't believe that that's our best foot forward because that's what we've been taught to believe. So my mission with this course, and I also want to correct something. I'm an instructor, not a doctor at Harvard. And I'll explain to you why, and it's very simple.
At Harvard. I'm at Hunter, you're at Harvard. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
There's no doctorate program for it. They didn't make a space for it in academia. So I ended up having to basically pioneer a thing at this level because there was no language class. There was no.
But how did it even come about? And I'm gonna call you doctor because you've mastered this. So you're beyond Dr. M'Cheaux. I'm gonna call you that because all of this is made up, right? On some level, the most mediocre education system will give doctorates to people, and then they feel like they're experts, and they go on TV talking stuff they have no idea about. Let's just
Taylor Swift just got it.
Come on, let's shake it up. Let's shake it up. You fake ass doctorates out there, So how does it even get to Harvard? Because Harvard's supposed to be the pinnacle of education, right? And let me just tell you, when I first heard this course, I had a side eye and a screw face at you because I'm like, why do we keep bringing our stuff to them? That's none of that. That's family business. They don't need to know about the Gullah and the Geechie. And I don't want no white person sitting in your class learning our culture. You want to talk about culture, uncultured. This is culture.
Right.
What do they have to do with our African journey and retention of our African language, synapses, the conjugation of all of that? That's none of their business.
You know what it is I think that when people hear Harvard, they automatically assume like the whole Harvard. Harvard has a lot of different components and departments, like it's broken up into lots of different pieces, and Gullah is in the African language program. And so the director of the African language program, brilliant, very progressive African man, John M'Cheaux, had encountered Gullah before. He's a polyglot and just loves his language. Had encountered Gullah before and always wanted to bring it to the program, but could never find the right combination of things, the right person. It always eluded him. And so there was, fortunately, that curiosity and that interest that was already there in the department for years before he and I finally met one another. And a student asked for the class. It did not exist. By serendipity, by the planets align, he and I meet. And listen, I'm a son of a preacher who's a real chatty patty himself. I will talk. If somebody doesn't cut this conversation short, we're gonna be talking till the sunset. That's what I do. And so we got to talking. And when he and I got to talking, I said, okay, well, to this day, I remember the first example of me explaining to him like how the language works. And I said, I can take the words of these sentences, and maybe you could try. Let me see if you can give you a little something here. That is not him, or is that him or them? It could be him, her, them. Is that him over there? No, that is not him over there. Yes, I believe that is him over there. No, I'm pretty sure that is not him over there. That whole sentence can be reduced to Dasamne, Danam, Dasam, Danam. That's it. That's all you need. Dasamne, Danam. Dasamne, Danam. I said the same thing twice, but changed the tone in order to affirm what I just said. And is that him is just that's some name. And that's it. Because we don't waste words. Because of the way that the language came about, first of all, from a pidgin, it turns into a Creole, but it's usually in a utilitarian space where you're using it for a specific reason. So you don't waste words. And we speak in parables and metaphors and analogies to make it make sense. Because first of all, that's the way we speak in our mother tongue. But secondly, because you want to paint a picture for the person who's learning to speak a language in an informal way. And so,
so pause there for a second, Dr. M'Cheaux, because this has always kind of been something I've struggled with understanding. You bring people, snatch them from a continent, you bring them to a place, you disperse them. You don't teach them how to speak. Somehow they just gonna have to figure it out because it's illegal to learn how to read, to write. So in spaces where we get to do a crossover, throw words in, because they're words, just the way Arabic, the Spanish words, because of the Moorish influence in Spain, right, because of the conquering of Spain by the Moors, they're words that are similar. We've taken words in every place that we've been, but there's a retention of Africa. What African words are present in the Gullah Geechie language that we know for sure come from Benin or Ghana or from Nigeria, from the places that Burkina Faso, places that we were actually snatched from?
One of the words that are very, 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 very common, you'll find it throughout the diaspora, is like uno. Either uno, una. We all have a different version of it. It's like uno, una, hana, hina, yena. It's the same word pronounced differently, because remember, some people say, oh, but it got to be a different word because we pronounce it a little bit differently, but you got to remember you're learning it phonetically. It's not written down. And so everyone's learning the word based on if the person that taught it to you had an accent, then you're going to learn it in that accent. If you pass it on to somebody else, then that's how they're going to learn it. So whether it's una, hana, yena, you're saying the same thing and it means you. Okay. In Gullah, there's decline. When they say decline is the break of dawn, like right before. Well, there's different times of day. All right. The first time of the day is 40 in the morning. 40 in the morning gonna be after midnight.
40 in the morning.
40 in the morning, between after midnight to around 3-ish, 4-ish, and then you start getting into decline. Decline is going to be right before like this, at the break of dawn, and that's when a lot of our ancestors would get up and start doing their planting by morning. So they would time when they would plant by the time of day in the season, and so then it'd be morning, and then you probably heard this before when people say season, mean good evening. The season, y'all, okay, season, season, Miss Jenny, and it's the evening, and that's usually everything, including night. We're hardly ever going to use a night is season, but sometimes if we do. But at any rate, though, decline has another word in Sierra Leone is docline. And docline, it means essentially like the beginning, like in layman's terms, it's like the beginning. It's also like a thing when you like sweep up and make way for the ancestors to have a peaceful journey over to the other side. And so we take words like tote, we take words like guba and kuda. If somebody, you hear someone referring to kuda, that's going to be your turtle. And guba is going to be your peanut. Yam. An interesting thing with the word yam is we think we're talking about the same thing, but it's not. Like we will call sweet potatoes yams because there is another thing that looks like a sweet potato, but it's not a sweet potato. And so we call those yams, and then yam went on to be the word for potato. So to eat.
And I learned that in Ghana, what a yam really looks like.
Right.
And it looks nothing like a sweet potato.
Right. And then with like the N at the beginning of yam is going to be where you get your to eat. And so yam is going to be, to eat. And you find that throughout in Jamaican patois, Bohemian Creole English, in Bayesian, and you start wondering how all these words going from place to place throughout the diaspora, and you're using many of the same words. Probably the one that is the most whoa that I ever heard anywhere else other than Charleston. I never heard anybody else. I have never heard anybody else use this word who wasn't from Charleston, and that was bunkie. I never heard nobody but a Charlestonian say bunkie until I went to the Bahamas. And there's a more of a G than a K, but that happens in our language where the G and K's alternate, where like shaka would sound like shaga. And ku red, gu red sound the same. And so we'll alternate. And so we're saying the same word, but I'm like, how? That's such an, odd word to
define bunkie. I know what bunkie means. Define it for the people.
Bunkie would be one's buttocks.
Yes, the bunkie hole, 866-801-8255. The reason why we connected on the Twitter sphere is because you put out a video. So I want to play it and have you respond to it. So play the TikTok, because you're very, very, very popular on TikTok. And your TikTok handle is
Sunn M'Cheaux.
Sunn M'Cheaux. That's right, Sunn M'Cheaux. All right, play it, Smiz.
Peace. Attention white women who are either misled or lying in my comments to everyone else about white women's role in white supremacy. This is apparently what you believe and would have everyone else believe is your historical relationship with white men, the damsel and the villain, when in fact, this is your historical relationship with white men. Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde were partners in crime. Were they equal partners? No. The lion's share of the dirt was done by Clyde. When it came time to split their take, the split was not even. Now imagine thinking that oppression is not getting equal share of ill-gotten gains stolen from other people. Furthermore, imagine thinking that your bid for equality with your partner in crime is the same as the people you victimize looking for justice or reparations for what you took from them. Every step of the way in the creation and perpetuation of white supremacy, white women were there alongside the white men, benefiting. Benefiting equally? No, but accomplices nonetheless. In fact, there were times when white men disallowed white women from participating in their wrongdoing, and white women chose to do it anyway, on their own.
First of all, your name, Sunn. What's the etymology? What's the background there?
It is it goes back to like the god Helios. It's sun, and
What did you name yourself?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that, because I actually have a segment that I did on names in the African American community. And well, not just African American, but just in Africa, throughout the African diaspora. When people talk about what the real name is, and Caribbeans would join in, and Jamaicans would join in and say things like, "We literally had no idea, like our daddy's name was Frank, till like we were 30." and their names don't be like Frankie. It'll be like Frank. They call him, Charles, and his real name is Frank. Or
yes. Listen, I got a cousin Hank whose name I think is William, but we call him Hank. His daddy's name was Peter. That wasn't his name. My grandfather, whose name, all of them have the same name, John, William. Right. His name was Buck. I didn't know until, so it's like Buck, Peter, Hank, all of these people all have different names, real names.
And the thing is, a part of that is protection. That's a cultural thing, is that in the Gullah Geechie culture, we have what's called basket names. There's there's two layers to it. There's the spiritual, and then there's the literal physical protection involved. There's two reasons. Number one, our ancestors would give the child that was born a name that they would announce for, if a spirit or someone, an evil doer, someone wanted to put root on the baby or bring harm to the child, first thing they need is the name. And so the name that they would name the child, its actual name, versus the name that the community calls the child, would be two different things. And so it'd be hard, while you're trying to work root on this name, that's the child's other name. And also the other purpose behind that is, obviously we were moved around from plantation to plantation at times, or sold off. So instead of, if we all call you Bug, your name might be Karen, but we all call you Bug. And so when you go somewhere else, you don't introduce yourself as Karen. In fact, you don't introduce yourself as whatever they call you when you get where you're going. You tell the people your name is Bug. And so if in the event that I need to find you, I don't go looking for Karen, because they might have changed that name 2 or 3 different times, depending on whoever got you after you left where we were. So when I meet someone who went in the direction where you went, I would say, hey, do you know somebody named Bug? And they'll be like, yeah, I sure do. She went this place or that place. So the way that we deal with names in our community, in many instances, you know who the bill collector is? Because ain't nobody else calling here asking for Jonathan but a bill collector or the police.
I love us.
Yeah, everybody else would have called him Scooter.
Right. So Sunn with 2 N's, your mama didn't name you that.
No. My mama calls me a different name than what's on my birth certificate.
Got you. All together.
Right.
And the M'Cheaux reminds me of Oscar M'Cheaux. Is that your actual given last name, or is that also a self-determining?
No, I went through a not to change the vibe here, but I went through a really, really hard loss when I was younger. I lost someone who he was my idol, he was a family member. He was just, it was the first time I had taken a loss like that deep, that profound. And so over time, I just needed a way to reconcile that, and nothing was working. And so what ended up happening is, long story short, what ended up happening is the name came to me, and I realized that was their name. That's it, and I'd never even heard it before. It just came to me in a moment when I was just like really, really introspecting, in an introspective space, and just very depressed and looking for some way to get out of that. And I knew that in going through religious conversions that there was a name change that would be in place for certain religious conversions. And so that's why I was, at the intersection religiously and spiritually. But this just kind of felt like something different. And I didn't want it to be arbitrary. So at one point, and I know everybody, hold up in the Lord talking to you. I'm not saying who or what, I just know I heard. The name came to me and I just ignored it. Then it came to me again. I just ignored it. And then finally I said, let me see what this means. And then I looked it up and it was their name. And a sense of peace came over me. And I knew that's what it was meant to be. And so that's what I took up. And to me, that is something that I caution Black people, in particularly those of us in white power structures throughout the diaspora. The name game, like that, the names mean something. They should.
They should. Well, they know that, which is why we didn't get the name ourselves, which is why, they understood the power of words and language and communication, which is why they separated us on the ships, which is why we didn't get to be in the same spaces with people, which is why we didn't learn how to read and write and do all those other forms of communication, but we learned how to quilt. And we learned how to code switch and do all of these things. You were raised by a Pentecostal holiness minister. And I think for a lot of Black people, and I'm glad that you went through this journey and shared that with us. Thank you, Dr. M'Cheaux, because a lot of us are indoctrinated with a very European colonized form of connection to God. And we have to, the rituals and the pagan undertones to the rituals that we do have nothing to do with our connection to the Most High. Zero, matter of fact, which also separates us from our ability to plug into that thing that you plugged into to give yourself peace, because a lot of us have gone through trauma. We can't find peace in ourselves because who we are at the core has been so muddied with this system that we're in that strips away every little bit and piece of what makes you you. So I appreciate it.
And it's one of the things where it actually should be spelled with an I, but I removed the I as a sign of humility. That's why it's spelled without an I. And
listen,
so that was my, it was just, sometimes you just have to be humble in the face of something that's greater than yourself. And when you went to it in need and it did what you needed to do to pull you out of that space. And so that was just my offering of humility.
I love it. We're talking before we went to break. I played a TikTok clip. What inspired you to call out white women the way you did? Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde. You're not a damsel in distress, white women. If you identify as being white, you are complicit in a crime. You are Bonnie to Clyde that has hijacked humanity. Ooh, you did that. Why?
Well,
Why
now,
did you do it?
my official statement on the whole Will and Chris thing was, don't ask me. Like, if you're not black and family and off the internet, like, there's certain conditions as to under which I will talk about this, but other than that, don't ask me. If you happen to come across me talking about it with somebody who's relevant and in that space, then maybe you can overhear something, be nosy, but don't ask me. And so what happened was, people like, I guess they felt entitled to my take on it. Like, for me to which that ain't how this work. Last time I checked, this app free. So, nah. And they started the conversation on their own. And then here comes the interlopers, and here come the infiltrators, getting all up in the middle of everything, gaslighting Black women. And so anybody who knows me and knows how I run my spaces know that's a no-no. So I see the conversation transpiring. And so what I did do, I said, well, you know what? If the argument is against Black women, if Black women are saying we don't mind jokes, it's not like, because it's the old gaslight. No, y'all can't take a joke. You just don't like it because he's calling y'all out. And the sisters are like, no, that's not it. We know jokes. Like, we grow up with jokes. We tell jokes. We crack jokes. We know jokes that are helpful, harmful. We know jokes that, come on now, we know jokes. But this ain't that. And so I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you an example of Bill Burr calling out white women, Chris Rock calling out Black women, and let y'all compare the two as to who's doing what in their set. In Bill's set, he was taking white women to task for their complicity in white supremacy, and then saying, you don't get to hijack Black women or Black people's movement and place yourself at the front as an oppressed group when you are a part of the reason that these people are an oppressed group. Like, that's not how that works. You need to sit next to me and take your talking to from these people whose movement you're trying to hijack. That was basically the gist of Bill's set. Chris Rock's set was just reinforcing a whole series of stereotypes, negative stereotypes about Black women. And my point wasn't that Bill is not problematic and Chris is problematic. My point was, sisters kept saying, this is what he's doing, and we kept being told that's not what he's doing. So I said, okay, well then here's exhibit A and here's exhibit B. Can you tell the difference between when somebody just kind of giving you a good one, like kind of ribbing you a little bit, or when somebody's literally trying to assassinate your character for fun for an audience that don't love them? And that's the problem, is the majority of people in your audience are laughing at them, not with them. And so that was it. I didn't make any other commentary on it. And I just let the conversation unfold. Well, in came all these bunnies lying, denying, and gaslighting Black women, saying, oh, y'all are basically bad feminists because you're being divisive. You're falling for the men. Don't let the men tear us apart. And the sisters are like, what? The men? Do you think, who do you think you are that you can speak to me as though I'm some impressionable child?
So you played the Bonnie and Clyde. People started gaslighting, and then you doubled down with a response.
Yes, you should have known that. I don't know what made them think that if I did it in the first place, that I was going to somehow back off in the second place. I put out the Bonnie and Clyde thing, which, again, then they redirected all the gaslighting at me. Oh, you're saying that white women weren't oppressed. Listen, white dudes were oppressed. What do you think that they say when we talk about slavery? They say, oh, the Irish were slaves, which ain't true, but the Irish were slaves. White guys been oppressing white guys, since they were white guys. So that happens. So what, we can't hold them accountable for slavery because they're gonna say Irish were slaves? Well, then why can't they just do the same thing to you? Everybody holding a reverse Uno, reverse card in the draw for. Everybody's in a circle reversing one another. I'm like, no, we're not gonna do that. Okay, it doesn't matter to me what happens, 600, 1,000 years ago, whatever, to your old Viking ancestors. That ain't got nothing to do with what we're talking about. Okay, so we're not gonna blame
the Vikings.
Yeah, nobody can be accountable for anything because everybody oppressed somebody at some point. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not a question of whether or not you were or were not oppressed. Of course, everybody oppressed somebody at some point in time. Okay, but in this power structure right here, and also I like how some of the people from other countries try to slide and be like, "Who you Americans are so not in my country." Listen, white supremacy is global, so quit playing. Just have a seat and hush. Okay, and so in this moment, when you're not listening to me because I'm a man, and the sister coming to say, "No, he's right. I agree. What he's saying is right and exact." So you ignore her. So you didn't come in here to represent, anything but your
But
own
yourself,
agenda.
Bonnie.
Right.
Sit your
That's
Bonnie ass.
all it is.
Stop calling them Karens. They're Jennies, they're Bonnies, they're Amy's, they're Becky's, and all of the other things. All
They
right.
loathe that Bonnie comparison because the number one thing that they have going for them is this innocence, this purity, this myth of them being the damsel tied to the tracks. It's like, oh,
Right.
they didn't know. Somebody told me that white women voted for Donald Trump because their husbands wanted them to vote for Donald Trump. Now you tell me how many people can go in a voting booth at a time?
One, you already know. So how would they know? 54% of y'all, 53% of y'all. All right. We're gonna tweet out your response to the Bonnie women.